Hello and welcome back to a new episode of Code Study. So today we'll be learning about Gemini CLI and what it is all about. So we'll be looking into how we can set up an agent using Gemini CLI, how we can set up extensions, how we can set up MCP servers. We'll be going through some useful commands and a couple of demos. So without much ado, let's get into it. So what exactly is Gemini CLI? So it is a specific tool for your terminal. Its advantages are all about automation, right? So you use it right from your terminal, and it's specifically developed for developers and power users. But that does not mean that you cannot use it. And then I often see that people often get put off whenever somebody or I mention using the command line interface. But believe me, it is the way to use your AI agents and tools. It makes it much more easier to use, and it gives your agents more leeway in what they can do, right? So it gives access to your files, your environment, as we shall see. So what is the core benefit of it? Okay, the core benefit is direct integration. So essentially, we are using Gemini without leaving the command line environment. And for efficiency, right, many developers, they prefer the terminal, and typing a quick command is much faster than actually you going and opening a browser and trying to do things there. The added advantages of using a CLI or a terminal is that it brings to you or gives you the power of automation. So it enables you to do shell scripting. It enables you to write scripts to do automated analysis. It gives you power and flexibility, which goes beyond manual queries, right? To create reproducible automated workflows that save time and reduce errors. It gives you deep file system access. So the CLI can directly access files, understand code bases, and even suggest and apply changes to your local files. And this is far more powerful than manually copying and pasting code into a web chat, as it allows for in-context analysis and modification. Now, many people ask, why would I go to the botheration of using a CLI? Why not directly use the web app or the browser for using an AI agent? Well, let's do that comparison on why you should prefer one over the other. So if you look into the case of Gemini, you have a web app, you have the Gemini desktop web app, and you can also use it via the terminal, which is Gemini CLI. The primary use when you're using it in CLI is you use it for automation, coding, debugging, system tasks. Whereas in the web app, the primary reason why you would use it is to do some general chat, writing, brainstorming, research. The interface in the desktop is graphical, so in a way it's much more user friendly. It looks more attractive, whereas for the CLI, it's command line, it's text only. Now if you do a comparison for access and automation, in Gemini CLI, for the file access, it can read, write, and modify local files. Whereas in Gemini Desktop, you have to explicitly and manually upload the files or copy paste them, or copy paste the text content actually. And from an automation perspective, on the CLI, it's excellent. So it can be put in scripts, can essentially it can do anything that your terminal allows you to do, right? But from a Gemini desktop web app perspective, it doesn't have any automation. It requires manual intervention. So hopefully this would give you a fair idea of when you should choose one over the other and why developers essentially prefer CLI rather than go to the desktop and using the web app. I am on the official GitHub repo for Gemini CLI, which is github.com/google-gemini/Gemini-CLI. So if you go into this page, you will see very clear and detailed instructions on how you can install Gemini CLI and how you can essentially use it. Right? And it gives you some overview on why you should be using CLI and what are the advantages. Now, as I have mentioned umpteen times before, Google is very generous with its free tier. So it offers you lots of tokens and flexibility on what you want to do with your free tier. So essentially, if you have a Google account, you can use Gemini CLI with 60 requests per minute and 1,000 requests per day, which is quite huge. And it also gives you access to the Gemini 2.5 Pro model with access to 1 million token context window. Now, this is a large window. Okay, this is truly a generous offer. But remember, this is not like a bottomless pit. This context window can also run out pretty soon if you are, for example, using project some context heavy projects or processing that you want to do. So it's not bottomless, but I think for our intents and purposes, this is more than enough. Now, to install Gemini CLI, you would need Node.js. So if you do not have Node.js, pause this video, go into Google, search for Node.js installation, and based on your operating system, install it and come back. Okay. And then it gives you detailed instructions on how you can install it. So essentially, if you just want to run it without any installation, you can use this command, but I would actually prefer installing it on my system. So I want to install it globally so that I can use it whenever and wherever I want from any folder. So the command that you would need to use is this one right here, npm space install space -g at the rate google slash gemini hyphen CLI. Okay. And if you're using something like, essentially, if your system is Mac OS or Linux, you could use brew to install Gemini CLI. It reminds you to do updates, keep on doing your updates, because remember, it does not automatically update. So it is a good idea that at least weekly once you go in and run the command to pick up the latest build of Gemini CLI, and this would be the command that you would be using, which is npm space install space -g space at the rate google backslash gemini hyphen CLI at the latest. So authentication options, I always prefer using my personal account, right? But you can also, if you wanted, you could use your API key. So just go into your cloud console or a Gemini console and generate an API key, which you can use. You can set your API key and you can tie your costs with that API key. But this is not something I would personally recommend because the costs are pretty high when you use an API key. And then there's an option of Vertex AI, which you can just read through. I'm not going to go through it. Then it gives you some simple basic commands that you can use with Gemini. Okay, so let's get started. And assuming that you have installed it by going through this documentation, I'll start from that point onwards. I am on a Windows system, and to launch Gemini, what I would do is I would go into any folder, I would cd into it, or you can directly open the command prompt from that directory, your choice essentially. And I just need to type in Gemini, right? And make sure you have installed Gemini before you do it, because obviously it won't work if you do not have Gemini. And you press enter. As simple as that. Since I've loaded this frequently, right? So it loads my cached credentials. But if you're loading it for the first time, it would ask you to either log in with your Google account or use an API key there. So I'm using my personal account there. And as you can see, since I've already configured some MCP servers, which you'll see how to do, it loads those MCP servers that I have loaded. And essentially, you're good to go. Once Gemini is up and running, okay, and then what you can do is, if you do a backslash, it would give you a list of commands that you can use there. So some of the commands are related to the extensions and MCP servers that I have set up, but others majority of those you should be seeing as it is. So you can either do a chat, or you can do a clear, you can do compress, you can do the see the documentation. If you do a slash init, okay, what it would do is it would create a gemini.md, a markdown file in your project directory. Essentially it would give you a summary or an overview of what your project is all about. I'm not going to do that. You can just play around with these things here. One interesting command that you would be interested in is something called model. So if you select that model and it enter, it would give you some options, right? It would say, let the system choose the best model for your task. So based upon what you asked it to do, the system will select, the AI agent will select the model that it wants. So if it is some complex reasoning task that you have asked it to do, it will go for pro. Otherwise it will just use flash or flashlight. And based on what you want, you can override those settings, but I'll just keep it at auto and I'll let the system decide. Another thing that you can actually go there and look into is the stats. So if you do the stats, it will show you how much each model has used up its context. So how many tokens it has actually used there. So it says no API calls have been made in this session since I've not chatted anything. Essentially, there's no cost involved till this point. Okay, so we'll run this towards the end again and see how much it has cost me, how much this session essentially has been dear to my pocket. Let us first start with seeing how we can create an agent. Now, one thing that is not very obvious in Gemini CLI as compared to something like Claude Code, where you can do a backslash agents, and it will allow you to create the agent, define the agent that you want to interact with. Essentially, in Gemini CLI, it's not that intuitive, but you can build an agent here. So what you need to do is you need to create a text file where and name it with the agent name that you want to create. So this text file, I've named it as Leo agent Leo. And in this, I'm just defining what I want it to do. Okay. So it's not necessary that your description should be exactly as this is, but just a general idea. So what I want to do is I want to create an agent who is an expert software engineer and and a solutions architect. Okay, so I'm saying this is what I'm essentially saying, that you are a software engineer and a solutions architect with over 15 years of experience in designing so and so systems. I'm giving some skill levels. You can just give it a ranking like 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5. I'm just giving it stars. The AI system, the LLM model is clever enough to understand what I'm trying to say it here. I've just made it more colorful. And by the way, this is not something that I have written by hand by myself. I'll be honest about that. I've just asked Gemini desktop to generate a suitable agent definition file based on this requirement. Yeah, the first two lines are is the only one that I actually typed in. I just reviewed what it had given and I just added some things here and there, and it's quite good. So it gives some technical proficiencies, languages that it knows, back and front end, cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, containerization, solution and architecture design, what it should know. It should know microservices architecture, event driven architecture, API design, high availability and disaster recovery, performance optimization, security by design. And for the architectural design process, what I have mentioned is that uh, for the requirements gathering, it should ask you the detailed requirements for the solution. It should give you solution options. It will give you the recommendation on based on the solution option diagram. So once you have selected a preferred option, it will generate 4pro.io importable diagrams. It should be, which is essentially the logical view, the application view, the security view, and the process view. These are the four major architectural views that you would produce as artifacts if you are into solution designing. Okay, and just a couple of lines for philosophy, which is I believe in clean code, pragmatic solutions, and continuous learning, blah blah blah. But essentially, you get the gist, right? If you are interested, I will share this file in the public GitHub repo, in my public GitHub repo. Feel free to copy this and modify and play around. So let's create the agent using this file. Once you have created that file, the agent file, which I've named as agent leo instructions.txt, make sure you have copied or that text file is available in the folder you have launched Gemini in. So essentially, it would need access to that text file to create that agent, and you just need to type Gemini space agent space create the name you want for your agent to be. So I'm giving display name is hyphen display hyphen name within double quotes Leo hyphen expert space developer and solution architect, and I'm providing it with the system instruction file, which I can say provided by just specifying hyphen system hyphen instruction hyphen file space the actual file name. It is a roundabout way of doing things, okay, but this is a question I have essentially been asked from many quarters. How do you create an agent in Gemini, since it does not have a direct way to do with it? Hopefully in the future they will provide a direct command by which you can create agents. Essentially, once you have typed all of this in, you just press enter, okay, and that's what I'm going to do now. Once you've run that command, right, how do you know that your agent has been created? So either you can go into your root folder where Gemini has been installed, which in my case in Windows it would be under the users folder under .gemini, and you can see a folder created with the agent name there. I'll show you what I mean. So this is my root folder for Gemini, which is under my username .gemini, and within that you'll see an extensions folder, right? And within that extensions folder is what you will see your agent being created. So essentially, your agent is being created as an extension. So this is the file that has been folder that has been created for my agent there. Now let me go back to Gemini. Once I'm back, so I'm back in Gemini, and where is the agent created? It is created in the extensions folder. So if you try to type in something like agents, there's no command in Gemini, unfortunately. No, it doesn't show you anything, right? So to see your agent, essentially you have to type in the extensions command there, right? And slash extensions, and it will show you the list of installed extensions. I will be going through this in a couple of minutes, how you can install other extensions that you are interested in. But essentially, right here you can see your Leo agent being created. So it's the second last one, right? So Leo expert developer and solution architect. So it is active. It's not updatable because it has been manually created, right? The system will not know how to update it. If you wanted to update it, you would need to go into manually into that file and then update it. But anyway, it's up there. And how do we load it? So all I need to do is I just say Leo agent, and hopefully it should say, yeah, it should say hello, I'm ready for your first command. So my architect is actually loaded there, right? So it is ready to do things as per my whims and wishes. So let me try something. Okay, so let me try, yeah. So I'll say I need a solution architecture diagram for transferring a CSV file from mainframe to AWS S3. Once the file has reached S3, I want the file contents to be validated, parsed, and loaded into a Postgres SQL database table. Then I want a microservice to parse the table, and for each row call 3 external APIs sequentially. If the call to any API fails, the status should be recorded and the microservice should go on to fetch the next record and call the APIs. I also want a separate scheduled microservice which should go through the failed records in the table and retry calling the failed APIs. If an API call is marked as a failure for more than 3 days, an alert should be sent out to the development team on MS Teams and the row deleted. So, quite a detailed requirement I have here. And what I have seen is that the more comprehensive you are based on your requirements, regardless of the agent running in the background, whether using Claude, whether using Gemini, whether using Codex, does not matter, right? Whatever it is, the more verbal you are, right? The more verbose you are, the results you get are correlated to that. So don't be stingy with your words and requirements. Take the effort to build in a proper prompt, to give the LLM the proper prompt, right? Now, let me try running this and see what happens. So you can see it's doing right, outlining the architecture blueprint, architecting the system. It's processing some things. So it's giving me the options one, two, three. Now this, if you remember, this is exactly what we asked it. So this is what I gave the agent, right? So I asked it that you should give me some options, you should recommend an option, and you should ask me which option I prefer. So I have essentially the freedom to either accept that option or override it with a different option. So I'm just going with yeah, I agree with option one. Okay, fully serverless and event driven architecture. Is that not brilliant, right? So it's like interacting to an actual person, where it's following my instructions exactly as I've asked it to, right? So it's now creating the diagram components. So as you can see, it has generated the following files: logical view, application view, security view, process view. And I've specifically asked it to be in draw.io compatible format. Okay, and that is what it is doing. Right, so this will take some time, and it will ask you for some permissions, which I'll always allow. Don't do this in production, okay? Don't always allow. Just review what it is trying to do and make sure that you understand what permission it's asking for, right? So it says, yeah, it has generated this diagrams. Let's go and have a look into it. So I'm inside the demo folder and I can straight away see it has generated this diagrams in draw.io compatible format. So let me see. It would be, I would not expect it to get it right the first time. Okay. So let's see what it has actually generated. Right. So I can see the diagram. Okay. The diagram is there, but as you can see, the images are, I don't know what to make out of these images. And I'm pretty sure that it is the same case for all the other diagrams. So let me just open application view as well, just to make sure. Yeah, it's the same thing, right? So it has generated a diagram, but the actual images within the diagram is not something that I can see. So let me ask Gemini to correct this. So I'll close this and this. Let me go back to Gemini and I'll say I cannot see the embedded images within the diagrams. Please correct. Let me see how it responds. Yeah, so it's saying it's formulating the implement. I cannot, yeah. Apologies. Yeah, okay, okay. Searching for alternatives. Let's see how long it takes. It's trying to clone GitHub repo with some icons for some AWS icons. Remember, I had asked it to use the cloud platform as AWS, and that's why it's trying to retrieve AWS icons from the GitHub repo. Now, bear in mind, it can do this okay, because I have actually configured the GitHub repo MCP server for this, for Gemini CLI. Okay, so it can easily go in and search the repos and download whatever it needs. We'll go through the MCP stuff in a bit. Okay, let's get over with this part first. Seems now it has downloaded the required icons and it's trying to replace it one by one. So it says I will start with the first diagram, logical view dot row IO, and I'll begin by replacing the S3 bucket icon. This is going to take some time. Let's wait it out. After what felt like ages, the diagrams are finally ready. Just to give you an idea, I had to do quite a few iterations. I had to keep on prompting it, and in between, I went and had my lunch. So this can be a waiting game, and you have to be patient if you want the results to be there. So this is the logical view that it has generated. Yeah, from mainframe, it uses FFTF, goes to S3 bucket, uses the Lambda processor, so it has the Postgres SQL server, and it uses a Lambda processor for calling the external APIs. It has a retry, again a Lambda, it's a cleanup Lambda, which calls the MS Teams. It has the AWS Secrets Manager, the Event Bridge Scheduler, which all looks hunky-dory. Just let me have a look at the application view. Oh, this was the application view, sorry. So let me have a look at the logical view, which is, yeah, you have from the mainframe, file ingestion service, data storage, CSVs, structured data store, which is the Postgres that we just saw, the primary API processing service, which was replaced by the Lambda services in the application view, which calls the external APIs, the retry service, alert and cleanup monitoring. This looks good, right? And then the processing, the process view, again, this looks all okay, right? From the AWS transfer family, goes to the S3 bucket, and from there it calls the Lambda, which reads the CSV file. Then event is triggered, and then record is inserted into RTS. It calls the SQS service. It calls the procedural Lambda for calling the next API in sequence, and so on, so forth. Let's have a look at the security view. This one looks a little bit jumbled up. The color scheme is definitely not right. But essentially, it gives you a fair idea on what you want, right? So you might need to take this as a starting point and then work on it. So this is what we will usually do in IT corporations, whereby we use the AI tool, the AI agent, to give us a starting point on which we can further build. So for that purposes, I think this suits quite well. Right. Now let us try to look into something, not something, let us try to see what MCPs or how MCPs can be set up in Gemini. To set up your MCP servers, you need to configure your excuse me, settings.json file. Now, if you do not have your settings.json file, you need to create one in your root folder .gemini, and this can be found under users, under users directory in Windows. So let me show you how the settings.json file will look like. And this is how your settings.json file should look like. In case you do not have it, just ask Gemini to create one for you, create a sample one, and it will do that. And you just need to replace your API keys. So in this sample, what I've used is the Perplexity Ask MCP server and the GitHub MCP server. And this is where you should be providing your API keys here. So this is where you will be providing your Perplexity API key, and this is where you'll be providing your GitHub personal access token, so that the MCP servers which work remotely can function as expected. And also note that I'm using Docker in order to communicate with those remote MCP servers. So you can use NPM if you wanted. But since this course is not about MCPs, it's about Gemini, I'm just going to leave it there, that essentially I'm using Docker. And if you're using Docker, ensure that your Docker service is up and running before you configure this. Otherwise, your Gemini CLI will not be able to pick up these MCP servers. Now to check that this is actually picked up correctly, what I'll do is I'll go to my Gemini CLI and let me type in MCP, which will bring up the list of MCP servers that's up and running here, right? So you can see I have quite a few MCP servers, not only two, but uh, the remaining MCP servers I have configured in a different way. So I've configured it using extensions, which I'll be discussing after this. So the ones I configured using the settings.json file is GitHub and Perplexity, the first two, and you can see that it has listed that these are the servers that are available and the tools that are available and belonging to that server. So Perplexity has three tools: Perplexity Ask, Perplexity Reason, Perplexity Research, and GitHub has around 26 tools. The other MCP servers like Context 7, Cloud Run, Firebase, Security Server, GenKit, Nano Banana, okay, all this I configured using extensions, which is what we'll be seeing next. I think Google extensions are a game changer in the way by which you can use tools and MCPs that are made available there. Essentially, it adds intelligence and capabilities to your MCP model. So, if you think about MCP, you can visualize it as being a toolbox and extensions as being a special construct by which you can use this toolbox or tools available in this toolbox effectively. So that's how I would like to see it, and I think that this is also what the official page actually states what is extensions. So I am on geminicli.com/docs /extensions. So if you go here, it says that Gemini CLI extensions package prompts, MCP servers, and custom commands into a familiar and user-friendly format. So essentially, with extensions, you can expand the capabilities of Gemini CLI and share those capabilities with others, right? And it goes on to give you some essentially how you can install it. So you just need to say Gemini extensions install and the source. We'll be seeing this in a minute. Okay, so how you can install it. So you can also uninstall it. There's the command for that, and you can disable it. Essentially, you're not uninstalled it, but you're disabled it for the time being, maybe because it's consuming too many tokens, for example, and you can re-enable it later. Okay? So these are the different types of commands that are available. It also details how it actually works. So in your root folder in .gemini, you would have it would create a gemini-extension.json file, which is where it would configure those whatever extensions you have enabled or installed. So you could either do it manually, you could go and create this file manually, or you could just use the commands that has been mentioned here to install those extensions. Now let us have a look at what all extensions are available. So if you go to github.com/gemini-cli-extensions slash, and this is the official GitHub repo, you will see the whole list of CLI extensions that's available for Gemini. So you have Nano Banana, you have Flutter, you have Security, you have Code Review, Jules, GenKit, MCP Toolbox. So whatever you want is available. You just need to get the right thing that you want and install it. So we'll see how to install this. So let's try installing something. Let me search for Code Review. There it is. So once you have selected the extension you want to install, just have a quick read through, rather have a thorough read through, because be careful of what extensions and MCP servers you give your system access to, right? Essentially, remember that these things are remote code execution. So they are essentially RCEs that are run remotely. And if it is not from a credible source or trusted source, you are opening your system to probably a lot of threats and cyber attacks. So be careful on whom you open your system to. Do not make it vulnerable. Okay. So this is the command that we need to use. So I'll just copy this and let me go to a PowerShell. Okay, so I've opened a PowerShell as an admin, and let me run this command. And it essentially gives the same warning that I was just talking to you about, that please carefully inspect any extension and its source codes before installing it to understand the permissions it requires. But this one should be fine. And that's it. This has been installed. Now let me go back to Gemini. But remember, I would need to relaunch it in order for those extensions to be effective. So let me do that. So I've relaunched Gemini so that the latest configuration changes are reflected. And I'm just waiting for my MCP servers to get loaded. So once it's stable and all MCP servers are loaded, I'll just list the extensions. So I'll do manage extensions. Yes, I'll list it. And there you have it. So the second one there, right? The code review, it's active and it's up. Now let us discuss a very interesting extension and a very powerful one at that, which helps you define AI flows and apps, and that is GenKit. So this one, the third last one here, okay, the GenKit version 1.20, and let's see how this works, because I really feel this is something all AI enthusiasts should be knowing. So if you go into the GenKit's AI repo, okay, let me just take this again. So if you go to the home page of the GitHub homepage of Gemini CLI extensions, you'll find it right on the home page mentioned on, so honorable mention there. So, okay. So if you click on it, GenKit, will take you to this page, and this is what you need. This is the command you need to run to install it exactly as we had installed code review. So just copy paste this command into your PowerShell, run it as an admin, and GenKit should be installed. So let us try out this flow. Write a flow that tests an input string for profanity. Okay, so let's try this. So I've copied this. Let me go into my Gemini CL and let me paste that. Okay. So what I've done here is I've essentially relaunched Gemini CLI in the folder where this files will be created. If you wanted, you could use the same folder, but I want it well organized. So let's see what it does now. Yes, it asks for some permissions, which I'll always allow. As you can see, it is looking up the GenKit docs, and it's looking at, yeah, it has picked up the GenKit MCP server, which is excellent. Always allow. This is fun, isn't it? Right, I'll always allow it. You can see how this is working, isn't it? How the MCP server and how the extensions are working in collaboration there. So it's essentially using our GenKit extension to talk to the GenKit MCP server and create the modules that we require. You see, it's creating the index file. Excellent. Now it's saying that this is what I need to do, right? Yeah. Just created a new flow named profanity test that checks a string for profanity. Here's what I did. I added the bad words flows. So created an index.ts file to initialize Jenkit and register the new flow. And this point is something you need to bear in mind. Okay, to run the flow, you need to start the Jenkins developer UI. First, make sure you have your Google AI API key set up as an environment variable. Right, so you need to set up your Google AI API key as an environment variable, which is Gemini underscore API underscore key. Okay, and then run the following command in your terminal. So once you have set up that key, you run this command. So let's go to the terminal and let's first set up the key and let's run this command. So I am inside this folder where Gemini created these modules, nodule underscore mod node underscore modules, the packages on the flows.ts or index.ts. So let me set up okay, let me show more options. Let me set up the environment variable. Okay, so I've opened PowerShell as an admin here. Now I've opened PowerShell as an admin in the folder where Gemini created those modules. So it has the flows.ts, the index.ts, the package.json, the node underscore modules. So I've opened PowerShell in admin mode within that folder. And I'll set my Gemini API key. And this is how you set it up. A very simple command: set Gemini underscore API underscore key equal to whatever your key is. Now, for obvious security concerns, I cannot show you my real key here. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video here. I'll run this command and I'll come back. So I've set up my environment variable for my Gemini API key. Now let's see what Gemini said about the next step. So it says I need to run this step. Okay, so do Control S and I'll copy this step here. And let me go back to the prompt and let me hit enter. Okay. Okay, it says it doesn't know what watch is, so I'll just remove watch. And it says the Jenkins developer UI is now available on HTTP localhost port. Now I open that URL localhost colon 4000 and I've gone to the flow section, and this is where you can see our flow that was generated by Gemini CLI. So let me now click on that. Once here, this is what you'll see. So essentially this is where you need to type in your string and the AI will check whether it has profanity in it. So let me test for, let me just say something like what a bloody hot day. Now remember, this is a very common usage, but bloody is supposed to be a profanity, so I would expect it to be flagged. So if I run it, and if it is a profanity, it should show something like true. It should set up a true flag that it is profane. Let's give it a couple of minutes. Right. And there you have, so you can see it used Google AI Gemini 2.5 Pro model, and the output is true, so it is a profanity. Now let me try something like what a nice sunny day, just to make this complete. Now this hopefully this should not show up as a profanity. And there, just finished running and it did not flag it up, so it did not show a true flag. So essentially this is not a profanity. And I think we are nearly at the end of our session here, but before we go, I would just like to show you something else that I had asked Gemini to generate, and it's quite cool. And before we go, I mean, this is just a bonus here. So I'd asked Gemini CLI to go into this star clusters catalog published by NASA. So you can just search for it on the net, and you can on Google, and you can find it. It's here, arc.gsfc.nasa.gov, and if you just search for the Milky Way stars clusters catalog, you'll come to this page. So I'd asked Gemini to go to this page and create a 3D visualization of whatever is available in that catalog. And what it produced for me is a Python script which I load, and let's see how it looks like. So these are the files that it generated, just in case you are interested. But I essentially need to start up the server, right? The HTTP server, and let me do that. And the server has been started up. Now let's see what it brings up. So it's available on localhost 8000. So let me open that. Right, let me go into localhost 8000, and that is your star cluster. So generated entirely in Python, right, based on the catalog that is available from NASA. So, I mean, this is just a way that you can play around with AI if you're interested in stars on what you want to do. You could add more depth to it. Perhaps you could ask it to generate it in 3.js, which would make it more dimensional. Okay, so it would make it more dynamic. But anyway, here we are, and I really hope that you enjoyed this session. So, till we meet again, adios.